Welcome to NewsNation's Backscroll, where we look back at our major news coverage on the most important topics and personalities of our time.
This morning, we're taking a closer look at surveillance. We told you about Ring Home Security giving police some access to doorbell cameras. We know there are about 12 incidents where the camera footage was given to law enforcement without the homeowner's permission. But we wanted to think and talk about how much privacy you can expect from companies like Ring. Aaron Nolan is here with a revelation from Amazon, the company that owns Ring. Aaron?
Hey, Adrian, good morning to you. These tiny little cameras have really become instrumental in owning homes. A lot of people have them. They've been great for us to check out our front door, our front porches in real time. They've been a deterrent and sometimes helped out in porch pirates and finding those people who have done that. But did you know from your Ring camera, some of this video can go directly to police, even without your knowledge? We now know just how often that's happening.
These days, cameras are everywhere, from convenience stores to ATMs, road intersections, the grocery checkout, and even doorbells. They've become a valuable tool for homeowners and police, but critics worry we're losing our privacy in the process.
Anyone with the right skill sets and the right technology can access these systems inside a person's home.
The latest alarm is being raised by Massachusetts Senator Ed Markey. He's been investigating Amazon-owned home security company Ring. Amazon is now responding to an inquiry by Senator Markey asking how many times this year has Amazon given video from a Ring device to police without the owner's permission. Amazon also explaining in each instance, Ring made a good faith determination that there was an imminent danger of death or serious physical injury to a person requiring disclosure or information without delay. Chadwick Moore, columnist and contributing editor for The Spectator, isn't buying Amazon's rationale.
It's hard to imagine what the situation was that you would need access to someone's doorbell camera, the law enforcement would, that would stop imminent violence, and how long it would take to get that permission.
To some, the video handoff seems wrong, but Ring's terms of service warns users grant Ring permission to use and distribute the content for any purpose.
Amazon has agreements with 2,100 police departments all across the country. It gives them access to Ring video posted by users on an app called Neighbors. Now, Senator Markey says he's concerned about the partnership between big tech and the potential for abuse when it comes to tech and police. Adrian.
All right, Aaron, thank you very much.
Now, we want to dig a little deeper into this with Ian Scher. He is the editor-at-large at CNET. And Ian, first of all, can you just explain a little bit more about what the agreements are that companies like Amazon and Ring, they have with police?
So we don't have very much information, honestly. These agreements are often shrouded in secrecy. And part of it is what the government says is national security reasons, right? We're dealing with oftentimes stuff around terrorism or imminent national security threats. And so what the companies say is that they put a good faith effort into making sure that these requests are legitimate and that they are not disclosing information when they don't need to. But in all honesty, we have to trust the companies and the government to act appropriately here.
And we don't trust the companies and the government, or at least a lot of people don't. And that's interesting that those are, it's not very spelled out. You're signing on to some fine print and saying, fine, take my data, use it, whatever. But then they're not being very upfront with how they might use it. Now, we've got a lot of cameras in this society. You've got businesses that have surveillance video. These Ring doorbell cameras are everywhere. We live in Chicago here, and your speed is tracked by cameras, and your parking is tracked by cameras. Should you just expect to be on video every time you leave your house?
Well, the reality is that we do live in a world where cameras are cheap and easily accessible and connected to the internet practically everywhere. And so in a lot of ways, yes, that's become a part of modern life. And I think if you took someone from like 1999 and plopped them down in today, they'd be pretty surprised at all the things that we do, considering all the sensors we carry around, right? I mean, my phone tracks where I am all the time. It tells it to my wife, and I trust Apple and Google not to share that with other people. But again, that's a trust that I have. And it's the same thing with the cameras and the microphones we put in our homes.
And I want to show you, we're showing video right now, a 4th of July video of a family in Nebraska. And the fireworks situation went horribly awry, and we are not showing that by accident. That video came from Simply Safe, and the family says that that video was made public without their knowledge. So Senator Markey here was focused on Amazon, who owns Ring, but they've got competitors out there. Are they all in the same boat as far as what their security agreements are? And the fact that they can just sort of take your video and your information of you sitting in your own yard with your kids and put it out there in public, whether you like it or not?
Well, in theory, when they have a good reason, they will, right? And this is part of what those 12 incidents in the last year are what Amazon talked about. But I do want to point out that's 12 out of 1.4 million cameras that were sold just in the last year. So they are also being at least a little scrutinizing about the system. And so, yes, there is concern, absolutely. There is pushing from all sorts of places, including the Electronic Frontier Foundation, many other organizations, to try and get privacy laws on the books. But it is notable that the United States has been very far behind Europe and other places in the world in actually enacting real and with teeth privacy legislation that will force rules on this type of stuff.
Well, and that's 12 that we know about, right? But Senator Markey only requested it from one company. So isn't it possible there are many more incidents of this that we just aren't aware of yet?
It is. I think, honestly, these companies are aware of the reality of what happens when they share this information, right? Which is that eventually we will find. And if it is something that we're all uncomfortable with, we're going to tell them, take a hike, we're going to get rid of our devices. So they do have an incentive to make sure that they are doing this responsibly. They can't just act as an arm of the government, because then all of us are going to say, we're not going to buy the next one, right? So there is some pressure on them already. And it's clear now that Congress at least has a way to ask these companies about this. Us journalists, including us at CNET, have been asking about this stuff for years, but the companies refuse to disclose it. It is only now, because Congress is stepping in, that we're finding out.
All right. I'm glad we were following up on your reporting then. Ian Scher, editor-at-large at CNET. Thank you.
I think a lot of people are just concerned about safety. And really, at whatever cost, it's like, how can I make myself feel more secure in my home? So whether or not the law enforcement is taking the footage, especially if it's a situation where there was a crime scene in front of your house, have at it. But at the same time, I think the biggest concern is the slippery slope, like Leland Vittert was speaking about on our show.
Well, it just puts you in such a tough position. It's like, do you want to be able to see what's going on at your house? Like, I've got a wife, a child, a dog back at home right now. Would I like to be able to look back there and make sure that they're safe? I would.
Absolutely.
But do I want somebody else to be able to do that at the same time that isn't related to me, who I've never met? I don't really want that, no.
Yeah. I think there are a lot of opinions about this story, but again, this is a conversation that we're having here on Morning in America.
We have all seen them, cameras on street corners, parking lots at public parks, even in elevators. And now questions about cameras at our home. Amazon, which owns at-home camera company Ring, is now admitting to handing over camera footage to police without a warrant or consent from the Ring's owner. The tech giant defended its use by law enforcement on Wednesday by pointing out that police can only get access to a camera owner's footage with their express permission or a court order. But after recent questioning, Amazon double-backed, now saying that it provided police with user recordings 11 times this year without permission or a warrant. Chadwick Moore, a columnist and contributing editor with The Spectator, expressed his outrage right here on NewsNation earlier this week on Balance.
It's hard to imagine what the situation was that you would need access to someone's doorbell camera, the law enforcement would, that would stop imminent violence, and how long it would take to get that permission, and then for that violence to be stopped. I don't understand. It makes no sense.
Questions remain on how much control big tech companies have over our privacy, and does this surveillance actually catch any criminals? Lawrence Capello, assistant professor of U.S. legal and constitutional history at the University of Alabama and author of None of Your Damn Business, what a great title, joins me now. Lawrence, so it is kind of strange. We buy these Ring cameras, and like pretty much everybody has them now, but Amazon gives the video out from the cameras that we bought. Is that legal?
It's not great. Look, surveillance is a phenomenal tool for law enforcement and for criminal investigations. Thousands of violent criminals have been brought to justice thanks to surveillance-based evidence, stuff from Ring cameras. I'm talking people who've done really, truly horrific things, and it's good that they're off the street. But that said, the right to privacy, that's an essential part of what it means to live in a free society. So that means that police surveillance has to come with certain guardrails. So this move with Amazon, just handing over someone's private Ring footage, is really concerning. And there's a really good argument to be made that it crosses a line. The problem isn't so much that police got access to this footage. The problem is that they got it without needing a warrant or a court order. Amazon just handed it over without any kind of judicial oversight and without getting the owner's consent. Look, one of the cool things about the Fourth Amendment and being in America is that when law enforcement wants to kind of conduct a search that maybe is a little bit weird or out of bounds or unreasonable, the Constitution says that you should get a warrant first. If you want to look at someone and see their footage, cool, that's fine. Just go get a judge, have a legal expert look at it, make sure everything's fine, and sign off. It's kind of a fundamental aspect of what it means to live in a free society. And otherwise, you're just taking people's word for it. And that becomes a really slippery slope.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was gonna say. It seems like a slippery slope. Would you get a Ring camera? Would you be nervous about it?
Yeah, I have video surveillance in my house, but it's something that I take some certain measures to make sure other people aren't able to see without my consent.
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to say. You can have surveillance cameras, but they don't have to be hooked up through Ring to Amazon's cloud where they have your video. I promised our producer, Ryan, I would ask you because I don't know what he's doing in his apartment, but he's very, very concerned that his Alexa could be listening to everything he's doing and that someone could get a hold of those recordings too. Is that also a concern? I mean, would you have an Alexa?
Yeah, no, I wouldn't have Alexa. I mean, yeah, there's the great irony in that, you know, you read 1984 and it's about the government spying on everyone. At the end of the day, we're the ones who bought the cameras and the microphones ourselves, right? But look, any question about this stuff is always going to come back to balance. One of the big things about privacy in the 21st century, I'm a history professor. I study the history of surveillance and privacy. In the 20th century, the big fights for privacy advocates were about stopping people from collecting information. That fight is lost. When people say privacy's dead, that's what they're talking about. But what you need to realize is just because your information's been collected, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't be able to exercise control over it. The battleground for privacy advocates in the 21st century is about what people can do after information's been collected. So you should be able to enjoy the many conveniences that come with surveillance tech, that comes with Alexa. The question today is about how do we strike a balance between enjoying those conveniences while also being able to protect our privacy. And this is something that a lot of advanced democracies have been able to do. One of the problems with the United States is we have some of the weakest privacy protections of all of the advanced democracies, which is weird because, you know, we're into individual liberty, we're into personal autonomy, but on this, it's something we're really slacking on, and it's something we really need to keep our eyes open about.
Yeah, it's fascinating, also frightening to think about. Lawrence Capello, thanks for coming on tonight. We appreciate it.
Breaking news. Federal Trade Commission alleges in a suit that Amazon employees spied on Ring users. The FTC claims Ring employees viewed thousands of stored videos and live streams of intimate rooms, bedrooms, bathrooms, and also insulted and harassed people through the two-way unit. Let's bring in the lead Federal Trade Commission attorney, Elisa Gilson. Counselor, thank you very much for taking the opportunity to join us, especially on short notice. And I just wanted to read a part of the meat of this suggestion for the audience. Ring narrowed employee access to customer videos in September 2017. Amazon bought Ring in 2018, and that becomes relevant in a second. According to the complaint, customers had to consent to customer service agents accessing their videos. But even then, you allege. Ring allowed hundreds of employees and Ukraine-based contractors to continue accessing all video data. Quote, importantly, because Ring failed to implement basic measures to monitor and detect inappropriate access before February 2019, Ring has no idea how many instances of inappropriate access to customers' sensitive video data actually occurred. Do you believe you can prove that?
In a complaint filed in federal court today, the Federal Trade Commission alleges that that's precisely what happened at Ring. So for a period of time, for a number of years, Ring actually gave all employees and contractors access to all of its customers' videos, regardless of whether it actually needed that access to perform its job. This meant that Ring employees and contractors had access to videos in customers' bedrooms, in their children's bedrooms, in their bathrooms, in the most private spaces of their homes. The FTC alleges that this conduct continued for years. This isn't all. According to the FTC's complaint, the FTC, or Ring then failed to take basic security precautions and basic privacy measures to prevent hackers from gaining access to those camera feeds. As a result, hackers were able to get into customers' accounts, to take control of their cameras, their videos, and to harass and spy on individuals in the privacy of their own homes.
So, Counselor, you know that they didn't just have access, but they abused the access?
According to the FTC's complaint, that's exactly what happened. This is not just an instance of theoretical access. This is an example of employees actually taking that access to spy. In one particularly striking instance, the complaint alleges that an employee, over a period of a number of months, looked at hundreds of videos for many, many, many women, spying on them until a coworker just happened to report the conduct. And similarly with hackers, sorry, please go ahead.
Go ahead. Let me just have you respond to what Amazon says. Put Amazon's statement up there, please, Dusty, just so we can balance the argument. We disagree with the FTC's allegations and deny violating the law. This settlement resolves this matter so we can focus on innovating on behalf of our customers. Now, let's talk about the settlement. $5.8 million seems like nothing if what you're saying is true and Amazon knew about it. So what can you tell us about the settlement and why it's going to fix this?
Yeah, this is a really strong settlement that we're very excited about. $5.8 million is money that is going directly back to consumers that were harmed by these practices. Under current law and under certain judicial rulings, we're somewhat limited in our ability to get more money back to consumers. But all of this money is money that will be going back to consumers. And that's not all. There are many protections in the order that will prevent Ring from profiting from its misconduct and from prevent it from doing similar things in the future. They'll have to delete data. They won't be able to.
Would you use a Ring camera?
There are very good reasons not to use cameras of this sort because of the possibility of spying and other kinds of misconduct. The FTC's order puts in place important protections to prevent this from happening in the future.
But it still could, though.
Under this order, Ring would be violating the order and could face serious consequences for those order violations. So there are important safeguards built into the order to prevent that from happening again.
They had to know it wasn't right the first time either, Counselor, and that's why so many people, we talk about artificial intelligence, like that's what we have to worry about. We have to worry about human weakness as much as we do anything else, because that's exactly what can happen. With access, all too often comes abuse. But, Counselor, thank you very much for laying out the litigation and the settlement and the risk. I appreciate you.
Well, new questions looming about your privacy when it comes to big tech. Amazon's Ring doorbell unit admits that it gave users' videos to police nearly a dozen times without the consumer's consent, or not even having a court order. This came in a letter that Amazon sent to U.S. Senator Ed Markey after he questioned the video doorbell surveillance practices back in June. Our host, Leland Vittert of On Balance here at NewsNation, joining us live this morning. I want to get your response to what Amazon's Vice President of Public Policy told Senator Markey. I believe we have that. Quote, let's read it. In each instance, Ring made a good faith determination that there was an imminent danger of death or serious physical injury to a person requiring disclosure of information without delay. So is the company saying this is, I mean, again, it's a dozen times, but it's about safety?
Well, that's what Amazon says. And when you sign up for a Ring doorbell, you buy the product and you sign up for Amazon's Ring service. And you acknowledge that you are giving Amazon this video, and they may turn it over to law enforcement with your permission, with a warrant, or in this case of imminent danger, except Amazon is the one who gets to decide. So here's how it works. The police call Amazon and say, hey, look, there's a burglar on the loose, or whatever it is that they say. And Amazon says either yes or no. We don't know how many times that they turned it down, and Amazon didn't say that. How often they turn police down, but there's absolutely nothing incentivizing Amazon to turn down police, because if something bad happens and Amazon gets the blowback publicly, they have no inherent interest in protecting your privacy and keeping your video private. The question then becomes the slippery slope, right? Is that now Amazon gets asked not necessarily for imminent danger, but for possible danger. Then next it comes that Amazon gets asked to turn on Ring doorbell's live feature and be able to look and use their artificial intelligence to see what cars are driving by your house, on and on and on and on. But once you've opened that door, that it is big tech now that decides what information gets turned over to the government and when, you have no control.
Do you think that right now, popular opinion, that there is more concern about protecting privacy, or, as is the case here, that there's not a downside if something were to go down outside your front door where you could possibly help catch a dangerous criminal?
Well, that conceivably, since it's happening outside your front door with the camera that you bought, you pay for, that would be your decision. The police would have to come knock on your door and ask you for help. If you had a home security system or a home security camera that was based at your home, that's what they would have to do. And if you said no, they could try to go get a warrant to do it. The difference is that Amazon here is admitting, and you kind of have to think that this is the canary in the coal mine. Amazon here is admitting that they're taking all of that control away from you.
Well, that's one perspective. More than 2,100 law enforcement agencies, they can request data from the Amazon Neighbors program. It's up from 400 agencies just 3 years ago. So I guess, but the question is, buyer beware. I mean, if it's in the fine print, that's one thing, though nobody reads the fine print. Or does Congress need to actually step in? Because privacy is a priority, especially in light of so many security leaks and even companies being tapped. I mean, let alone everyday folks who just want to make sure that they have a camera on their front door. Should the government step in on this?
Well, and there have been a lot of cases where the government wasn't the one requesting the data. There have been cases where people faked being members of law enforcement, called these companies and said, hey, look, we need to have an emergency request for data. And the companies the big tech companies turned over personal data to criminals because they never bothered to check what the law enforcement was. You talked about government regulation. Sometimes that's the solution. Sometimes that's the problem. But we're getting to the point where the left and right, even the far ends of the left and right, are coming together on this horseshoe, if you will, of the political spectrum in America, and beginning to talk about meaningful regulation on big tech. And meaningfully requiring them to actually protect people's privacy. You have to always remember, and this is a great example of it, is that when you are using whatever it is, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, or even a Ring doorbell in this case, you're not the customer, you're the product. And you are being sold by big tech to the advertisers, you, the user. So there is no protections for you, and there's no desire by big tech to protect you. So now we wait and see if this might be the one thing that Congress could come together and actually do something on. So good luck. Stay tuned.
Let's keep our fingers crossed that there is some unison. But I mean, cities like Chicago offering rebates to have people put cameras on their front doors so that they can try to stop the crime wave. I don't know. I'm curious. We should do a NewsNation poll that shows whether people are more concerned about their privacy or more concerned about helping to catch the bad guys, and whether they're able to have the communication from these companies that gives full disclosure. I think that's the heartbeat of what this story is.
It's all in how you ask the question on something like that. And you're right about Chicago. It's a fascinating program. San Francisco is trying to do the same thing. There's some cities now that are requiring businesses to put in camera systems and the like, which brings us closer and closer right to Europe, which is a surveillance state, and then obviously to China, which is a full surveillance state. Because when
you say it like that, Leland. When you say it like that, surveillance-based state. We're out of time, but I so love having you on. Thank you so much, Leland, for being with us.
Well, Amazon has agreed to pay $31 million in privacy violation penalties. The FTC accused the company of spying by keeping kids' voices and locations recorded by its Alexa voice assistant. NewsNation's Dre Clark joins us live. So, Dre, will Amazon have to change its practices going forward?
Yeah, Nicole, good afternoon. Amazon certainly will have to make major changes in order to be fully compliant with the law. As you mentioned a moment ago, the company has agreed to pay more than $30 million in settlement costs. You might be thinking that's not a lot of money for a multi-billion-dollar company, but the Federal Trade Commission says Amazon agreeing to pay that settlement only proves that they're suspicious about the company mishandling information and privacy protections were true all along. Now, the federal agency says Amazon repeatedly assured its users, including parents, that they would delete voice recordings of children collected from its Alexa voice assistant. But in a complaint filed against Amazon, both the FTC and Justice Department alleged Amazon kept the voice recordings for years and used the information to improve its algorithm and voice commands until 2019. The FTC says the company violated the Children's Online Privacy Protection Rule. That rule requires companies with a commercial website or online service directed to children to inform parents about the information they're collecting and give parents the option to delete. So Amazon did not do that, so they'll now have to pay a $25 million settlement because of allegations that actually violated child privacy through Alexa. In a statement, Amazon said this in part: while we disagree with the FTC's claims and deny violating the law, this settlement puts the matter behind us, and we believe it's important to put the settlement in the right context. Meanwhile, Dr. Lisa Palmer is a tech executive and says this lawsuit is another reminder that parents and users in general need to pay attention to the fine print.
And consumers need to be aware where their information is going. Every time you use an app, walk into a store, pay something with your phone or pay something even with a credit card, you are agreeing to certain rights, and you need to be aware of those rights. And with all the thoughts and the actions that we do every day, a lot of it we really can't keep track of. So you need to work with trusted brands and trusted vendors.
Now, in a separate settlement with the Federal Trade Commission, Amazon will pay $5.8 million to settle a privacy lawsuit. The agency alleged Amazon allowed its employees and third-party contractors to have access to customer video content collected on customers' Ring cameras. The FTC says the access was used for spying on customers and was abused by some company employees and contractors, violating the privacy of Ring customers. Now, in one instance, it's alleged that an employee of Ring actually looked at video from 81 different female customers. Meanwhile, for the next 20 years, Ring will have to disclose to all of its customers the kind of access it has to their content and information. Nicole?
All right, Dre Clark, live for us. Thank you. All right, so will this settlement make a difference, particularly with the child's right to privacy? Let's bring in Alyssa Gilson, an attorney with the FTC's Division of Privacy and Identity Protection. Alyssa, thank you so much for being with us to help us a little bit better understand this. Talk about the significance of this multi-million-dollar penalty against this huge company, Amazon.
Yeah, thank you for having me here today to talk about these really important cases. There are two cases. There's one against Ring, and there's another one against Amazon related to Alexa. These cases show what the FTC is doing to protect consumers' most sensitive information. These are the videos and voice recordings taken from inside the home. There's nothing more sensitive than that. These orders will change the rules of the road going forward. It's not just about the money, it's about how Amazon and Ring have to change their data practices. They have to clean up their data practices, tell consumers the truth, and the FTC will be watching.
So, Alyssa, as you just said, I mean, they're supposed to be cleaning up their practices. This part of this penalty was due in part to them not deleting this data, not revealing to customers it was being collected. That is supposed to change. But how can customers know and be guaranteed that those changes actually happen, that will actually happen going forward?
Yeah, it's a great question. So under federal law, under the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act, parents have rights. They have a right to know what is happening with their children's information. They have a right to consent to that, and they have a right to delete their data. That's what this order does today. It makes Amazon honor those obligations under federal law. So if you ask Amazon to delete that data under this order, Amazon must delete that data. And again, as I said, the FTC will be watching.
Ring, Nest, and the police. Having a security camera in and around your home is both useful and a source of peace of mind, but that footage could end up somewhere you never intended. With Google's Nest, some emergency situations can result in the company handing your video to police without your knowledge. And the news comes nearly 2 weeks after Amazon admitted to handing over almost a dozen Ring security camera videos to police without the owner's permission. That's raising some key questions about consumer privacy rights and protection. NewsNation's Sloan Glass is live here. Sloan, this is a growing concern for a lot of Americans.
Nicole, we're now learning that just like Amazon's Ring doorbell and security systems, Google will let law enforcement see your video from smart home data without a warrant. The issue raises key questions about consumer privacy rights and the abundance of smart home systems. Take a look at Google's privacy and terms page. If we reasonably believe that we can prevent someone from dying or from suffering serious physical harm, we may provide information to a government agency. For example, in the case of bomb threats, school shootings, kidnappings, suicide prevention, and missing persons cases. We still consider these requests in light of applicable laws and our policies. Just like their competitor Amazon, who admitted to giving video to law enforcement on 11 different occasions so far this year, Google has agreed to do the same.
I think the large majority would be willing to sacrifice a bit of privacy. If you're not doing anything wrong, then you have nothing to worry about.
But privacy activists say there's no process for a judge or device owner to determine whether there has been an emergency, and fear with an inch, law enforcement could take a mile.
A society where I can't go to a house of worship, where I can't go to a political protest, where I can't go to a healthcare facility without constantly wondering who is watching and who they can give that recording to, that's not a democracy. That's not an open society.
The Ring disclosure in response to questioning from Democratic Senator Ed Markey in Massachusetts. Amazon responding. In each instance, Ring made a good faith determination that there was an imminent danger of death or serious physical injury to a person requiring disclosure of information without delay. And just like Google, the Ring policy is all in the fine print. They warn users grant Ring permission to use and distribute the content for any purpose. Some people prefer to choose a product that grants law enforcement quick access to potentially life-saving data during an emergency. If you don't want them to have that information, go with an Apple product. Still, no matter your device, your digital footprint will always be subject to a subpoena. Nicole.
Always subject to a subpoena. Okay, Sloan, thank you.
Traveling with digital devices can be a risk. Sometimes devices are seized as you're going through security. They can be scanned and a whole bunch of personal data can be taken from them. For those of us who care about privacy, there are steps that we can take to minimize the snooping in our digital life if a device is taken. We're going to dive into 6 tips for traveling with electronic devices. The final tip is phone pair locking. This is where even if your iPhone is taken by security, they won't be able to connect it to their analytics machines. In our next video, we'll provide a step-by-step tutorial for how to actually enable this on your device. Let's get started. Say you're traveling and your device is taken from you at security. What usually happens to that device?
They want to copy all the data from the device so that they can analyze it later.
Michael Perklin is the former CISO of what used to be Shapeshift, and he's a digital forensics expert.
The copy of the device is fairly quick, between 30 minutes to an hour. They don't do any of the analysis on the spot. They just copy it wholesale, they ship it off to some other analyst, and the other analyst will go through the data at another time.
There can be very good reasons for wanting to protect your devices from this happening.
If you are a journalist and you fear that your device will be seized and copied as you're crossing borders, if you are a whistleblower and you feel that your phone may be taken by someone.
The last thing that these people want is someone seizing their device and making what's called a phone pairing. It's that trusted connection between a phone and a computer that's established when you get that pop-up that says, trust this device. Making a phone pairing with a forensics machine means that they're able to make a copy of your entire device and extract all kinds of personal information from it.
You can get browsing history of all websites that have been visited. You can get history of Telegram chats and iMessages. Stored on the phone with Signal is the encryption key used to decrypt Signal conversations. They can find that Signal encryption key and use that to decrypt any message that is already on that device. User contact data can be extracted, your SMS message history, a complete history of where you've been and when it can be gleaned from the device as well. Probably the most concerning data that can be taken off a device other than location data would be any 2FA seeds.
2FA stands for two-factor authentication. Apps like Authy and Google Authenticator are meant to secure accounts by providing a secondary means of authentication, where they generate a code and then you have to use that code to access your accounts. Each app
stores a private key on the device that is used to create those 6-digit keys. All those authenticators could be ripped off the device, and now they can use that to log into all the different services that you've used. They could also get the username and passphrases for all of your mail accounts to continue accessing your mail well after your device was imaged.
And that means perpetual access to any other accounts on your device that you're logged into as well. Then there's the risk of a keylogger that's been added to your device during the pairing process.
There's been a number of types of malware that have been released in the wild that have compromised either iOS or Android devices, copying every keystroke that you type into the keyboard, as well as allowing a remote attacker to rifle through all the files on the phone and download them at their own whim. When this is happening, all of this happens over the air, and there is no feedback to the user.
Apple and Google do patch all of these holes when they're discovered.
But that's not a guarantee that there isn't some other unknown hole that exists right now and is being used by smart hackers or intelligence agencies around the world to retrieve data remotely.
Clearly, allowing someone to seize your phone has a lot of risks. So what can we do proactively to protect ourselves when we're traveling? One trick is knowing when to turn your devices off.
Fully power off all your devices before going through security. And I don't mean just put it into sleep mode or close the lid of your laptop. I mean do a full shutdown.
Shutting down your computer makes it harder to decrypt its contents. Basically, when you have full disk encryption on your computer, a password is needed to decrypt it. Once you type in the password to initially boot the computer, that password gets stored in RAM, which stands for Random Access Memory. This is short-term computer memory that's used for things that need to be accessed quickly.
It's kept in RAM because as long as that machine is online, it needs to constantly decrypt what's on disk in order to run and do all the things you want to do with your computer.
But that password is a lot easier to steal if it's in RAM.
You can lift that password out of RAM and then use that to decrypt the full contents of the disk. However, if the computer is completely off and you turn it on for the first time, there is no password in RAM.
In this situation, the only way someone would be able to access the contents of your device is by compelling you to hand over your password. So, powering off your device adds a layer of protection. Do this when going through security and again just before you scan your boarding pass to enter the gangway.
The two most used points for capturing your devices are going through security and boarding the aircraft itself. Only turn it on once you're on the other side.
You can also do simple things like minimize the amount of data you travel with. Having a device specifically for traveling that's only logged into certain accounts can be helpful. It's also helpful to silo different aspects of your life on different devices.
Their work device should be used for work, their personal device should be used for personal, and they should never answer work emails on their personal device or do personal browsing on their work device.
This is actually an important lesson in general, because for example, if your company is sued and work devices subpoenaed, if you ever responded to work emails on your personal device, then your personal device would now be seized as well.
Data separation is incredibly important.
Next, you can also decrease the chances of drawing attention to yourself and being asked to hand over your devices in the first place by being aware of what kinds of logos or stickers you have visible on your being and belongings.
Don't have any cryptocurrency logos visible on anything. Don't wear your Bitcoin t-shirt. If you have any stickers on your laptop, cover it up with a blank piece of paper, and or when you take your laptop out of your bag, put it face down so that the stickers aren't visible. Reason for this is some border agents who aren't as educated as we are in how cryptocurrencies work, they may be overzealous in what they ask and say, oh, I see you've got a Bitcoin logo. Does that mean you're taking more than $10,000 worth of Bitcoin across the border? Sir, we need to bring you over into secondary inspection.
So you can try not to be targeted in the first place. Let's say your device is taken. You can limit the danger to your accounts by not having your 2FA keys on the device. Instead of using OTP authenticator apps, use a YubiKey for secondary authentication.
It is much more difficult to take a 2FA key off of a YubiKey than it is to take it off a mobile device.
Next, make sure your device is protected by a PIN, but there are a few caveats here.
4-digit pins or 6-digit pins are very trivial to crack.
There are at least 2 ways to boost your PIN's protections. First, you could set a longer PIN, or even configure your device to be unlocked with a passphrase instead of a PIN. Second, you could configure your settings to stop someone being able to brute force your PIN.
By default, when you enable a PIN, you can try as many times as you want until you get the right one, and then it will let you in.
You can change the default settings so that the phone locks you out after too many unsuccessful attempts, or doubles the amount of time you have to wait before trying a new PIN each time you're unsuccessful. You could even set up a self-destruct mechanism. For example,
after 3 successive incorrect pins, the device will automatically wipe itself. What's important is customizing the security settings of a device to limit or prohibit someone from trying too many times.
These settings can be changed on both iOS and Android devices. Finally, something that's only available on iOS devices is phone pair locking, where you essentially lock your phone to your own computer.
So that only that computer can manage the device, and no other computer that the phone plugs into will ever be able to manage the device.
This even stops forensics tools from connecting with your iPhone to analyze or copy it.
If you don't want other people to query the data on your phone with their computers, it's a good idea to pair your device with your own computer so that it cannot be managed by any other machine.
Someone can still manually look through your device, but no machine can connect to it, which means that
by enabling a pair lock, you prevent them from taking a copy of the data.
You do this through a piece of software called the Apple Configurator, which is a tool designed for enterprises that buy thousands of phones for their employees. It allows them to easily pre-configure certain settings in bulk on these devices in order to lock them down and prevent employees from mucking around with settings. But interestingly, it's also a tool that will allow individuals to lock down their own devices so that forensics tools can no longer connect to them either. In our next video, we provide a step-by-step tutorial for this phone pair locking process so that if your device does get taken from you, you can feel safer that no forensics tool will be able to make a copy. I believe that people have the fundamental right to try to protect their privacy, but how you do that is a very personal decision.
Choosing when to be cooperative and when not to be, I think, is just as important as preparing all of your devices in advance for privacy. I think it's important for people to weigh those two against each other and understand where they will come on that debate before they're put in a position where they have to decide.
So think about that before you travel. And if you don't want to be put in a position where you might be forced to hand over something that you'd rather keep private, perhaps arrange your devices in advance so that you don't travel with sensitive data in the first place.